welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Raja Sarosh Sohaib and these are the headlines. Pakistan has presented a dossier on India's war crimes and grave human rights violation in the occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, along with National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf, presented the 131 pages dossier at a press conference in Islamabad, exposing New Delhi's fake encounters and false flag operations. They said more than 8,600 mass graves have been found in 6 districts of Kashmir. The dossier reveals 30,000 people have been martyred since 2014. It says the occupation forces killed more than 650 women and raped nearly 3,900 others. The US government has released newly declassified record on the September 11 terrorist attacks. The documents released by the FBI describe the contacts between the hijackers and their associates in the US. The documents offer no evidence that the Saudi government was involved in the plot. Israel has yet again violated the May ceasefire with Hamas by launching air raids on the Gaza Strip. Israeli military says it struck targets belonging to the group in response to alleged rocket attack from the Strip. The latest strikes come a day after Israel hit Hamas positions in the besieged enclave. In Pakistan, at least 17 people have died after a torrential monsoon rains and mudslides hit areas in northwestern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. Rescuers said the cloudburst induced flash floods caused widespread destruction in the Torghar district and damaged several houses. Brazil has reported over 700 deaths from COVID-19 and more than 14,000 more cases overnight. Meanwhile, Pakistan has registered 58 new deaths and 2,100 infections in the last 24 hours. Globally, the COVID-19 death toll has reached over 4.6 million, infecting over 224 million people so far. That's all with the headlines. We'll be right back after a short break with the details. Welcome back. Pakistan has presented a dossier on India's war crimes and grave human rights violation in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, along with National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf, presented the 131-page dossier at a press conference in Islamabad. Pakistan has once again exposed Indian atrocities, including the occupying forces, fake encounters and false flag operations in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. In the dossier, Indian military officer can be heard conveying Prime Minister Modi's direction of torturing people in Kashmir. According to the dossier, more than 8,600 mass graves have been found in 6 districts of Kashmir. The dossier reveals 30,000 people have been martyred since 2014. It says the occupation forces killed more than 650 women and raped nearly 3,900 others. Since 2014, more than 120 people have been killed and thousands others blinded with pellet gun fires. In the past 6 months, over 15,500 so-called search operations were conducted. The dossier says more than 10,000 people have been disappeared in the valley. The Foreign Ministry spokesperson said evidence reflects India is running 5 ISIS training camps in Kashmir. Nearly 30,000 Kashmiris have been tortured in 239 cells in northern Kashmir. Now we have Sumaira Khan, our correspondent in Islamabad, with us. Sumaira, what are the highlights and key agenda of the press conference?
Yes, I think most of the points are just well narrated by even you just a while ago. But if we just go through the, if we just go through the entire details of this dossier that can be termed as another eye-opening dossier presented by Pakistan, not just with the national and international media, but with the international community. And I've heard that copies of this dossiers have been already sent to the UN officers, those who are right now functional in Islamabad, and also to the UNGA offices where the next very important UNGA session is going to take place in person after a gap of 2 years. So if we detail about the content of the dossier, Foreign Minister Qureshi informed that it contains 3 chapters and 113 references, 26 of which are international media review reports and 41 are reports from Indian media and think tanks. He also added that it also contains 32 references to international human rights organizations and 14 references from Pakistan. Foreign Minister was also of the view, and he informed the media personnel that Indian war crimes have also been detailed in the dossier, and we can mainly term that the dossier is entirely drafted and crafted on the basis of Indian occupying forces atrocities in the valley. And then he said that, speaking on Indian atrocities, Qureshi informed that 900,000 Indian troops are stationed within Kashmir, which is one of the largest deployment in the world anywhere and it cannot be termed that it is deployed on a longest border or any part of the world that is under conflict zone, that is amongst the conflict zone. He also said that Sayyid Ali Gilani's funeral, he referred to that as well, that it must be an eye-opener for the international community, those who are watchdogs over the human rights violation on that in the valley, and what to talk about the actions that have been taken to strip off their state designation from the Indian side, and yet we have to wait for the stern reaction from the UN officers and United Nations itself, apart from the rhetoric statement. I asked him a question that there are numerous resolutions that are giving liberty to the Indian occupied Kashmir residents, that why they are not given their right to self-determination. And we don't just have those resolutions, but we also have locus standi. If Pakistan talk about it, Pakistan has a locus standi on Kashmir. Then why UN is not moving? What is stopping UN to liberate Kashmir like they did play a part in East Timor and South Sudan? So Foreign Minister said that we are seeing a change from the UN side. Earlier there were the days when even the international community never obliged requests from Pakistan, and there is a difference. Right now they're behind closed doors, and NSA endorsed a statement that now there is a biggest change. There is the biggest shift in the policies towards India. Nobody now says that Pakistan is lying or Pakistan is fabricating an evidence. Now community is looking through all the evidence, and EU Disinfo Labs episode is one of those eye openers. So we are moving towards that. We are seeking a very good future for the liberation of Kashmiris from the shackles of India. So all I could gather is Pakistan is doing its homework on stern basis and based on irrefutable evidence. But now it's the international community's role. How do they go about it?
All right. Now, Sumaira, has Pakistan ever presented such hardcore evidence against Indian brutalities?
Oh yes. Last November 2020, there was that press conference, and it was addressed by DG ISPR, Major General Major General Babar Iftikhar, and Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi. And even in that episode, there were many chapters containing that the dossier was containing, and it was once again on the Indian brutalities, not just Kashmir, but the information was going round and round about all the Indian involvement, heinous crimes and evil characterizations in Afghanistan as well. And that was the one dossier that is still lying at the very important offices of all major countries, not just UN, but all other international platforms, including SCO, Islamic organizations, and for, as a matter of fact, G8 and P5 as well. So right now, the NSA, Moid Yusuf, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, and our Minister for Human Rights, Shri Mazari, was also there. And they also called upon the international community, and mainly on United Nations, to please play their major role in liberating the innocent Kashmiris out of the shackles of Indian occupying forces and Indian government.
All right, Sumaira Khan, thank you for joining us. For more on this, we're joined by Lieutenant General Amjad Shoaib, defense analyst from Islamabad. Thank you very much for your time. So today Pakistan has presented some very hardcore evidence of Indian brutalities in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Do you think this will instigate the international community to raise voice against the Indian cruelties in the valley?
See, first of all, most of these things are known to the international community, not in that much detail, but of course these are known because not only our media or we keep on talking about these, but at the same time they also have their own information system. But the point is, why don't they listen? There are two very prominent, I think, reasons for that. One is their own hypocrisy, their own national interest, their own vested interest, where they want to fight with India. They don't want to annoy India. That of course is there. But then I think we also do not play our cards well. Today we have held a press conference. We have presented a dossier, and you'll see the matter will end here. Every case is to be pursued vigorously at every forum and continuously for a longer period till such time that you start seeing the results of whatever you have been doing or you are going to do. You must have a result-oriented effort. And once those results start coming in, only then one can say that your effort has been successful. So we just leave it there. We don't try to employ many other means. For example, after presenting this dossier, why don't we hold a conference, let's say a briefing conference of the P5 countries in our own foreign office? And we not only we present the dossier, but we also answer their questions so that they are to be satisfied when they leave our foreign office. Similarly, at many other forums in various countries, we should pursue the matter. We don't do that. And unfortunately, the previous governments, they also didn't pay much attention. All these things are available. Today we have a dossier, but without the dossier even, many things are visible. And our own governments, they were reluctant to talk about it. So that, I think, has been the reason that we have not been able to achieve whatever we wanted to achieve. And now I think is the time. If you recall, last year, end of the last year, we had presented a dossier, again a very powerful dossier, about the Indian activity on the France soil from where they have been perpetrating terrorism against Pakistan. And did you hear anything about that dossier subsequently? I don't think there was any activity. We presented the dossier, we sent the copies to UN, etc., and then we forgot about it. So matters should not be left. I think it suits the international community that that from your side there should be a complete silence after you have held the press conference, so that they don't have to be made answerable to whatever the allegations have been leveled against India. We talk about their double standards, etc., but then we also have our own weaknesses where we do not pursue the matter vigorously and for a long time till we start seeing the results of our efforts.
All right, General Amjad Shoaib, nowadays the world nations are busy highlighting human rights issues in Afghanistan, but they're silent towards the atrocities in Indian-occupied Kashmir. What do you think is the reason behind this dual standards approach of the international community?
It's all hypocrisy. If you look at the actions of the international community, most of the Western powers, they have committed huge human rights violations. Even if we talk about various wars which were unleashed by United States, particularly in Iraq and Afghanistan, the atrocities unleashed by them, the human rights violations committed by them, these are there, and so you can we can realize that if they were so sincere about this violation of human rights by others, they wouldn't have committed themselves. So human rights violation is a slogan which perhaps is a tool with the hands of the international community or the big powers, which they use selectively whenever it suits them. So for India, it doesn't suit them, but if India starts defying their own design, the American design or any other design, where they want the Indians' support or Indian involvement, then you'll see this subject of the human rights violation will also come up. But till such time they keep on having cooperation from India for their own objectives, they will never talk about Indian human rights violations. And this is what they have been doing all over the world. They'll start talking about human rights violations, about human rights violations by China in Xinjiang. And next door we have Kashmir, they'll never talk about it. So this is all selective. Yeah, I mean, and all these actions, reactions, and whatever we say, it's not based on any principle. It's not based on any reality or realism. It is all based on your own interest. So I think we should not expect that the international community, once again, after the presentation of this dossier by Pakistan Foreign Office, will have any change of stance as far as India is concerned. See, Turkey and India both have purchased S-400 from Russia. And America has imposed sanctions on Turkey, but they have not imposed sanctions on India. They haven't even talked in public about this deal by India with the Soviet Union, with Russia. So double standards are there. We should expect these double standards from these countries because they don't have any morality. Their stance is not based on any moral values. It is all based on their own national interests. So we should also take care of our own national interests and should not be. We must shame these people and we must keep on harping upon the theme and the dossier that we have presented, the reality which we have brought out. We should not leave these things at their mercy. We should keep on hammering until such time we start receiving some kind of response from the international community in our favor. We should not leave these issues.
Right. Now, how much do you think India's ambitions of bringing demographic changes in the occupied valley go against the international law, particularly the UN Resolution 47?
See, this is illegal. You can't change the demography of any disputed territory. And at the same time, I think it is inhuman too, because you are trying to eliminate the culture of a particular community, their identity. You are also trying to obliterate their type of living that they have, and you also you are trying to defy that principle of democratic existence of a community. So, unfortunately, again, we have not been able to highlight. I remember that this Indian intention was being talked about at various forums by various other institutions and various other, I would say, the think tanks and organizations. Some 15 years ago, this was brought out. And now it is going on unabated. Now the Indians, they are in a hurry. They are issuing the citizenship certificates to everyone from South India and elsewhere. So they don't have to live there, but they will have the right of voting. So whenever there is a plebiscite, whenever there is a government to be formed and there are elections, all these people, they'll be rushed from various parts of India and they'll come out to Kashmir and start voting. And that is how you will have ultimately a minority converted into a majority artificially, and then they will hold the government, and it will be a Hindu predominant government. So these are very dangerous signs which we had known much in advance. These trends were there and we could see the Indian plan, but our previous governments, first of all, they never talked about it. And even this government, they talk about it, but thereafter they do not pursue the matter where the things go wrong then.
Lieutenant General Amjad Shoaib, thank you very much for talking to Indus News. Moving on, the US government has released newly declassified record on the September 11 terrorist attacks. It is the first investigative record to be disclosed since President Joe Biden ordered a public release of the documents. The documents released by the FBI describe the contacts between the hijackers and their associates in the US. The documents offer no evidence that the Saudi government was involved in the plot. Speculation of the official involvement swelled shortly after the attacks when it was revealed that 15 of the 19 attackers were Saudis. Early, the Saudi embassy in Washington said it supported the full declassification of all the records to end the baseless allegations. Pakistan has sent the fourth consignment of humanitarian aid to Afghanistan's Mazar-e-Sharif city. Islamabad has already sent 3 planes of relief goods to Kabul, Kandahar and Khost in last 3 days. In another development, Pakistan's envoy to Kabul, Mansoor Ahmed Khan, has met newly appointed Afghan Finance Minister Hayatullah Badri. In his tweet, Khan said the two sides discussed trade and transit matters to facilitate to the common people. The remains of the U.S. Marine have returned home on the 20th anniversary of the September 11 attacks. Sergeant Johanny Rosario was among 13 U.S. service members killed last month in a suicide bombing outside the Kabul airport. She was one of the last American service members killed in the 2-decade-long Afghan war. Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker, Boston Mayor Kim Jenney, and Senator Ed Murkey paid their respects to Pichardo's family. Pichardo died as she was screening women and children at the Abbey Gate. She will be buried in her hometown of Lawrence. Russia says it is looking into the possibility of providing humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan. Russian ambassador to Kabul, Dmitry Zhernov, however, said no practical agreements on the issue have been reached so far. Zhernov said so far he saw no requests directed specifically at Russia, but Afghanistan is ready for economic interaction with Moscow. Zhernov said Russia, China, Pakistan and Iran were the only countries that kept their embassies in Kabul and did not flee. The Russian diplomat also attacked West's decision for freezing their 3/4 of Afghan budget, adding that it will worsen the crisis. It's time for a short break. We'll be right back in just a bit. Welcome back. In Iraq, 2 explosives-laden drones have targeted Erbil International Airport, where US-led coalition troops are stationed. There were no immediate reports of casualties. Kurdish security officials said the explosive landed outside the airport. A spokesperson for the semi-autonomous northern region dismissed reports the attack had impacted flights. He said the airport remained open and an investigation was ongoing by Kurdish authorities. The attack is the first following a 2-month hiatus in drone and rocket attacks to target the US forces in Iraq. The US blames Iran-backed militias for the attacks. For more on this, we're joined by Dr. Arnaud Devlay, international political analyst from Syria. Devlay, thank you for your time. The U.S. forces have been targeted again at Erbil International Airport. Was this a deliberate strike on the 20th anniversary of 9/11 attacks?
Well, one could analyze it like this. On the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, which basically led to an endless war strategy by the United States going after every country that they had decided to basically take out in order to engage in democracy building, quote unquote. It is a smashing reaction from the people in the region, the real sovereign forces in the region, that U.S. presence shall not be tolerated anymore.
Right. Now, more recently, the attacks have become more sophisticated, with the attackers using drones instead of Katyusha rockets. Who is behind these attacks?
The means being employed by the Iraqi resistance, most likely benefiting from Iranian expertise in improving their arsenal, but also improving the means of delivering new explosive devices with more precision and more lethal effect. The idea being that the U.S. forces must feel that their fortifications and/or bases are not out of reach from any attempt by the resistance to evict them or to send them a message that their presence is not wanted anymore.
Right. There are some 2,500 U.S. troops in Iraq apparently helping local forces counter what remains of the ISIS group. But why the terrorist attacks are rising in the country?
Well, that's a good question. Because that the U.S. And its allies are essentially propping up terrorist organizations, not only in Iraq, but in Syria as well. And it's been a recurring problem for the resistance forces, be they in Iraq or Syria, have managed to secure the borders between the two countries so as to prevent the flow of those elements from one side to the other. And obviously, the results have been very efficient, and the Americans are trying to reactivate those cells by any means necessary and using those already in place, so to speak, in order to intensify attacks and make themselves relevant again, should I say.
All right, the U.S. has announced to withdraw its forces from Iraq by the end of this year, but it will continue to train the Iraqi military. Does Baghdad back presence of the U.S. troops in the country or want complete pullout like Afghanistan?
Yes, you are referring to the recent visit of the Iraqi Prime Minister to Washington, whereupon a consensual decision was arrived at, which basically invoked a requalification of U.S. forces' role in Iraq as technical advisors. But the idea is this whole thing is cosmetics in nature, and that the U.S. has no intention to altogether pull all of its forces out, despite the Iraqi parliament voting in favor of such pullout back in 2020, just after the assassination of Hassim Soleimani. So we are seeing now basically two factions, at least two factions within the Iraqi establishment. One that is bent on getting the U.S. troops out of Iraq, the sooner the better, and the other faction, which is more likely to somehow collaborate or at least feel the pressure of the United States in making sure that some U.S. presence remains in the country under whatever levelization you might want to invoke. For instance, some of the job descriptions have been requalified, and it is now question the issue of being more like NATO forces as opposed to purely U.S. forces. But it's all cosmetics, and the American, notwithstanding the requalifications and or relabelization of foreign presence in the country, are behind any attempt to prevent the Iraqi people from recovering their sovereignty.
All right, Dr. Arnaud Devley, thank you for talking to Indus News. Moving on, Israel has yet again violated the May ceasefire with Hamas by launching air raids on the Gaza Strip. Israeli military says it struck targets belonging to the group in response to an alleged rocket attack from the Strip. It says the raids targeted an underground rocket production workshop, weapons storage site and training facility. The latest strikes come a day after Israel hit Hamas positions in the besieged enclave. Earlier, the regime troops also injured more than 170 Palestinians in a clampdown on protests in Nablus city. The Arab coalition says it has intercepted and destroyed an explosive-laden Houthi drone launched towards Saudi city of Khamis Mashhad. In a statement, the coalition said it is taking strict measures to protect civilians. Meanwhile, the militia also targeted the port of Mocha in Yemen with missiles and bomb-laden drones. Yemeni officials say the attacks caused huge destruction to the port's infrastructure and burned the storehouses of some 8 agencies. The UAE condemned the attacks, calling them a blatant defiance of the global community and a disregard for the international laws and norms. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation also expressed the strong condemnation of the attacks. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi is visiting Cambodia to meet with Prime Minister Hun Sen and with other officials. COVID-19 regional issues, trade and security are on agenda of today's meeting. Russia showed off its new military hardware at the War Games with ex-Soviet ally Belarus. The Russian defense minister says new combat robots and tactical vehicles were used on the second day of the Zapad 2021 drills. It says the Platform M combat robots are remotely controlled and armed with grenade launchers and a machine gun. Meanwhile, now Sarmat-2 tactical vehicles were also used in the exercise. It added that it was the first time such hardware had been operated. Earlier, President Vladimir Putin denied that the drills are directed against anyone. He said that they are responsible given the increased NATO activity near the borders of Russia and its allies. However, the drills, which will run until next Thursday, have alarmed Ukraine and some NATO countries. Brazil has reported over 700 deaths from COVID-19 and more than 14,000 more cases overnight. Globally, the COVID-19 death toll has reached over 4.6 million, infecting over 224 million people so far. More in this report.
Despite the rapid vaccination drives at the global level, many countries continue to face steep increases in infections and deaths. In the US, health officials are expected to authorize Pfizer vaccine for 5 to 11-year-old children by the end of October. Meanwhile, 3 US studies suggest vaccines offer strong protection against the virus, even in the face of the highly transmissible Delta variant. Australia has purchased an additional 1 million doses of Moderna from the EU as the country accelerates its inoculation drive against surging infections. The country's most populous state, New South Wales, reported nearly 1,300 new locally acquired cases in the past 24 hours.
I want to see 80% first dose next week, and I'm confident we'll get there around Tuesday or Wednesday. And then my challenge to the New South Wales community is let's get to 90% the following week. And let's also work across our most disadvantaged communities to make sure that no one is left behind as we strive to have the most equitable distribution of vaccine of any country in the world, and that's my aspiration.
Over in France, violent clashes broke out at an anti-health pass protest when an unidentified group attacked demonstrators with sticks and walking crutches. In Greece, thousands of people marched against mandatory coronavirus vaccinations. Police used tear gas and water cannons to block them from reaching a trade fair where the Prime Minister was delivering his annual economic policy speech.
We came here to give a message to the government that we will not stop our fight. They're making fun of us with the changes that are coming to a new labor law that was recently passed hand in hand with the employers. We are shouting that we are here, we will resist, and we will continue our fight until the end.
In South Africa, health regulators have approved Pfizer vaccine for children aged 12 and older, paving the way to offer vaccinations to teenagers. Meanwhile, India logged 338 more deaths and over 28,500 new COVID-19 cases in the past 24 hours.
Meanwhile, Pakistan's capital Islamabad has become the first city to have at least 50% of its eligible population fully vaccinated against COVID-19. Taking to Twitter, Planning Minister Asad Umar said 71% of its citizens have received at least one shot. Meanwhile, Pakistan will begin vaccinating adolescents in the age group of 15 to 17 years from tomorrow. The country has reported 58 more deaths from COVID-19 in the past 24 hours, taking the death toll to over 26,700 so far. The coronavirus has infected more than 1.2 million people in the country. Pakistan nation is remembering military officer Major Raja Aziz Bhatti on his 56th martyrdom anniversary. Bhatti was bestowed upon the Nishan-e-Haider for the actions of valor during the Battle of Burki with India in 1965. On the occasion, Pakistan's military said Bhatti's heroic feat inspires us to defend the country at all costs. In a tweet, the ISPR said Bhatti successfully repulsed Indian attack on Lahore with his gallant actions. Hailing from Gujarat, Bhatti joined newly formed Pakistan Army in 1950 during Indo-Pak War in September 1965. He defended strategic BRB Canal bravely for 5 days until he was hit by an enemy's shell and martyred. In Pakistan, at least 17 people have died after several houses collapsed on torrential monsoon rains and hit northwestern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. Police said 11 bodies were recovered from the debris in the Torghar district. They said 3 houses in the Jhatka village were completely swept away, while others were less affected. Rescue operations for those still trapped under the rubble is underway. In Aptabad, authorities said a mudslide in the suburbs also killed a couple and their child and injured 3 others. Typhoon Chen-2 has lashed the Philippines' northmost islands, cutting power and damaging houses in its wake. The National Disaster Agency says over 11,000 people have been infected by the storm in the country. Chen-2 downgraded to a Category 3 storm from a Category 5 after it struck the northern islands of Butines. Meanwhile, the typhoon caused heavy rainfall up to 5 inches in Taiwan as it centered past the island's east coast while heading for Shanghai. Airline flights and train services were suspended in the island amid the storm. As per media reports, over 2,000 people were evacuated from flood-prone areas of the east coast country of Hualien. Over in the Chinese mainland, the government has issued a typhoon warning for Shanghai and also warned of a possible torrential rains. In the US, a new wildfire has broken out in the South California across the arid hills of Los Angeles County near a major freeway. Local media says the blaze, which started in the afternoon of about 5 acres in size, spread to nearly 400 acres in only a few hours. It says the fire was burning along both sides of the Golden State 5 Freeway near Castaic Lake, and a portion of the road was shut down in both directions. Officials say the fire had been 0% contained as of last evening, while 2 firefighters suffered burn injuries. The cause of the fire was not immediately known. Around 100 wildfires across the U.S. West have burned on area as large as the state of New Jersey. Meanwhile, in the US, the corridors of the New York subway are decorated with larger-than-life vibrant glass mosaic murals that are aimed to move with the subway rider. More in this report.
The installation is the idea of renowned US artist Nick Cave, who is best known for his exuberant sandsuits. The sandsuits are head-to-toe costumes made with a variety of fabrics, textures, and colors that cover the entire body of the wearer. Cave says his idea was to install a mosaic that moves along with the people passing through the corridor.
The corridor is this space that sort of navigates from A to point B and so it's all about movement. And that as you are walking and passing through, it is moving along with you. So that was really my idea, was that it operated the same way in which the people were moving through the space.
The mural, called Everyone, is the first of a 3-piece installation, with its sequels, Each One and Equal All, set to be completed next year. When completed, the artwork will cover 4,600 square feet and will extend from the Times Square to Grand Central subway stations. Cave says the artwork presents him with a new direction.
The thing is that I think as an artist, that we can't limit ourselves to the means necessary. It's how do you remain open and available for a new point of view, a new direction to sort of present itself. And so for me, this presents a new direction.
The artwork is Cave's largest permanent public art and the largest mosaic project in the New York City transit system. It was unveiled as part of a public campaign to welcome riders back to the subway after the lockdown and to encourage the use of mass transit.
In another story, the movie Happening, produced in 1963, An Illegal Abortion, has won the Golden Lion Award for the best film at the Venice Festival. More about the award ceremony in this report.
The Venice Festival Awards ceremony wrapped up the 11-day movie marathon, with many films held back because of the coronavirus pandemic. Stars from far and wide turned out in force on the Venice red carpet for the success of a festival. The movie Happening won big at the night. It increases complexity of a situation as young woman confronts prison term or death due to termination. Film director Audrey Devan said that film's central theme is still relevant today as in 1963 when film was produced.
I did this movie with anger. I did the movie with desire also. I did it with my belly, my guts, my heart and my head. And I wanted Happening to be an experience.
Spain's Penelope Cruz won the Best Actress prize for playing a single mother in Pedro Almodovar's Parallel Mothers.
I would like to dedicate it to my great husband who's here with me and my wonderful children, Luna and Leo, my family, but especially to two other parallel mothers in my life. My mother, Encarna, the best values, the best teacher, and my best friend. I love you, Mama.
While the Best Actor prize went to Jordan Arcela from the Philippines for the film On the Job, The Missing Age. Meanwhile, Italian director Paolo Sorrentino was also awarded the Grand Jury Prize for the Hand of God film.
Now it's time to have a look at the weather situation around the globe. That's all from the news studios for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.